Hello, a very warm good morning to all of you, and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to today's The Hindu newspaper analysis, where we take a look at the daily edition of today's The Hindu newspaper, analyze the articles relevant for the examination, look at some of the areas around that article which can be asked in the exam, wherever possible, look at the map portions also, take a look at the practice question, and also a couple of articles in news from the PIB. So, today, in total, we are going to have a discussion of around 10 different topics. So, here, five of them in slightly greater detail for the relevance in the mains exam. So, securing India against the threat of Mythocalypse. So, this is about the new AI engine developed by Cloud, that is Mythos, and how it can potentially impact India's own cybersecurity scenario and the need for global collaboration thereby. This is relevant for your GS paper 3. Now, India's road through Myanmar is one of engagement. This follows the president's visit to India. Now, it does carry a substantial weight because India has been following the case of realpolitik or a kind of pragmatism with Myanmar rather than following the global trend of isolation of Myanmar. So, this becomes important. What are the projects associated between India and Myanmar, the international collaboration projects between India and Myanmar? With the help of the map, we will take a look into that, relevant for your GS paper 2. Now, new and raw, and a new phase in India-Nepal relations. So here, basically, both of them are associated with the case of India and Nepal relations. Here, the issues between India and Nepal and what is going to be the outcome and what should be the way forward, relevant again for your GS paper 2. Then, China's role in international order is an article written by the Chinese diplomat talking about how China's influence and role in international order is increasing. This becomes relevant for your GS paper too. Here, we will just take a look at the areas of cooperation and the challenges which still do exist between China and India. Then Indian cormorant is the species which has been mentioned and which has been depicted with the help of image in the first page. So we are going to take a look at the three species of cormorants that you find in India, their unique features, and also their conservation standard as per IUCN. That becomes relevant for your prelims. Bonn Climate meet. Now, there, India has raised the issue of inadequate financing. So, what is this Bonn Climate Meet? It is held annually. That also becomes relevant for the examination. From PIB, we have picked up Tezpur Litchi, the GI tag lychee, which has been exported to from Assam, and the role of EPIDA in this. So that is something we are going to extract out of it. Then SAPLING Dialogue 2026, what is it about? And Land Port Management System, or the WINME, which was inaugurated by the Home Minister yesterday. So what that is about. So these are the topics that we are going to discuss. This becomes very relevant for your prelims examination overall. Now, here, before we start the discussion of the first topic of the day, for all of you interested in having a structured preparation for prelims as well as the mains examination, so Unacademy Plus brings you a kind of a host of services like live classes from the various educators, any educator that you want, the handouts, and the practice section where you can take up the quiz and the tests. And thereby, you can test your assessment and your learning skills on a weekly basis. So, this is available at a 5% discount. And then, Unacademy Iconic offers you a kind of an upgrade where you not only get mentorship, one on one mentorship with qualified mentors who shall guide you about how to study because everybody has got different requirements. Somebody is a working professional, somebody is a college going grad, somebody is a post grad, somebody is a full time aspirant. How to shape your preparation. The books, the hard copies shall be delivered to you. The URTS and MRTS modules associated with the prelims and the mains examination and UPSC topper sessions. Now, for the first 1,000 users, it is available at a lucrative price at a 50% discount. Use the code IES English to gain the maximum possible discount at that particular date. Now, having said that, we come to the first article. The first article is Securing India Against the Threat of Mythocalypse. This is associated with GS3. Okay. Now, Mythos is a new model of AI which has been developed by Cloud or Anthropic. Now, this has basically taken a leapfrog in terms of the types of generative AI that you would have seen till now. Now, this has not only expanded the software engineering components, but it is also quite unique in terms of detecting the various flaws existing in the cybersecurity networks. Initial tests have also indicated that Mythos is one of those self learning AI mechanisms whereby it knows how to hide from the various different tests and the analytical tools. It knows how to get to the result. And if it detects that someone is observing its own procedure, then it can mask its own process as well. So it is a very developed AI tool. Now, what does the article talk about? The article basically tells us that we in as a country, we are not completely prepared to face the challenge of mythos and the newer generations of AI. Now, as a consequence, we are vulnerable to various different cyber attacks and the threats that we have, because in our country still a large amount of data is stored in a very archaic system where still COBOL and Windows, they are the method of storing the data. So that is why the article calls for a kind of a revamp of our cybersecurity scenario, understanding the issue at hand, and also form global collaborations with countries like UK, US, forming initiatives across the G20 member nations, and also, for example, the Quad AI security mechanism, so that we can combat the threat which is posed by the various hackers across the globe. So that is what the article is about. Let us organize this in a structured manner so that you are able to retain it in a proper manner. So the context of the discussion is that Cloud Mythos, a new AI model developed by Anthropic, has raised various issues and various different alarm bells. According to the creators, Mythos can outperform human experts in cybersecurity tasks as well. Now, they are becoming globally accessible, including to countries like India, while oversight mechanisms like AI security, that is still something which is not very common in our country. Now, AI security institutions, they are already a norm in countries such as UK, US, etc. And that is where India has been lagging behind. We have not set up so many AI security institutes, or no frontier, or not such a security institute of such a large scale. So that is where we are lacking substantially. But then, Cloud Mythos, the five alarming capability milestones. So 4x individual productivity, 25% higher SWE, that is software engineering benchmarks that are there. So 25% higher performance, 93% UI detection, even in the smaller sections of the screen. When taking a screenshot, it can detect that. Now, test awareness rate, now, the model basically was able to detect that it was being evaluated, and thereby it was able to mask its process. That tells you the ability of the AI to finally outwit the human controllers. And that is a substantial progress. Zero-day vulnerabilities were found. Now, many of the zero-day vulnerabilities have been found which existed in various software systems for more than 16 years. What are zero-day vulnerabilities, by the way? Zero-day vulnerabilities are those lacunae in the cyber front or the cyber security in any particular software. Let's suppose there is a lacunae. Now, if that can be exploited, the entire system can be brought down, but it is not easily detectable. In simplest of the terms, the think about it, oversimplified version. Let's suppose you have a brick wall, the weakest of the link in the entire brick wall, which lies undetected for many years. But if someone gains access to that weakest brick, the entire wall can come down. So these kind of zero-day detections and vulnerabilities were detected with an increased efficiency by Mythos. So the challenges posed by Mythos, and why Mythos does represent a new threat. First of all, discovery of unknown vulnerabilities, right? Existing AI systems generally they identify the vulnerabilities that human experts can understand and fix. But how is Mythos different? It can discover vulnerabilities that humans may not even know that could have existed in any form, right? So it is already smarter than the previous generation. Ability to find zero-day vulnerabilities. 0 days are particularly dangerous because there is no existing patch, no defense because we are not aware about that. So previously unknown flaws in the software. And Mythos has basically indicated the ability to detect such lacunae which have existed for more than a decade or so. Now it has also indicated emergent offensive capabilities, right? That is cyber attack, whereby it can basically detect a host of different vulnerabilities. Understand this process. Let's suppose this is a security system. It will have a vulnerability in, let's suppose, the API, it will have vulnerability in some of the other components, and so on. But this Mythos can chain all of them together to mount a debilitating attack on the software system, and that can completely bring it down. So, the ability to have a chained attack, that is something which Mythos has shown the ability of. Now, if a software shows this kind of an ability, why should we as a nation state be concerned? That is because this software can now be available to any low level hacker as well. And when you have countries in the neighborhood like China which deploys hackers in large numbers at a factory scale, so in that particular case such AI tools can become weapons of mass destruction. Now, when we talk about the overall challenges in a broader spectrum, so it can be summarized like this. First of all, it lowers the barriers to cyber attacks, where now even low level hackers can basically mount an attack. Okay. So that is one of the major issues. Then lack of AI safety institute. In our country, we don't have a frontier safety institute which does study the development in AI and the overall impact. For example, with the development of Mythos, UK's AI Safety Institute was the first one to flag the various different gaps in the cybersecurity spectrum. So UK has it, US has it, India still doesn't have any AI safety. So that means India is more exposed, more vulnerable. Now, India has had a success story in the past decade and a half that is known as the India stack. When we talk about the India stack, what is India stack? The case of the UPI, right? The UPI payment link, where now we have become one of the largest users of UPI and basically digital payment overall. Then, when we talk about, let's suppose, Aadhaar, much of that is maintained online. Then, the case of accounts, financial system, right? That is what earlier would be cited as um, the jam trinity, the Jan Dhan accounts, the Aadhaar, and the mobile telephony. All of them, they use a software platform, right? But then, while on the front end, they provide convenience to the consumer base, large consumer base, a large growing middle class in the youthful population of India, with one of the largest mobile smartphone users base anywhere across the country, across the world. But at the same time, when we talk about the back end of this, back end is still managed by legacy systems. And which legacy systems are we talking about? The systems which are still controlled by the PSUs. For example, the banks. Now, the banks, they still operate on very older systems like COBOL, okay, Windows 2012, and so on. So they are very vulnerable to cyber attacks, right? So if let's suppose a newer method of or a newer form of AI is used to attack this legacy system, then the entire success story of the India stack can come crumbling down. So that is why India is very vulnerable. There are severe gaps in terms of cybersecurity workforce that we have in our country in order to protect the critical infrastructure, the digital infrastructure, the case of the financial mechanism, the financial tools, power supply systems, etc. We have a perceivable gap of close to around 5 lakh to 6 lakh professionals who are lacking in terms of cybersecurity. That means we need to deploy more cybersecurity experts to the tune of around 5 lakh to 6 lakh. Obviously, that cannot be done overnight. It is a process that if you kickstart it today, it takes its own sweet time to materialize. So that is why the gaps in cybersecurity workforce means vulnerability level vulnerability does. So, what is the way forward that we have? The way forward, few of the way forward that we can have. First of all, international collaboration. Okay, international collaboration in this particular case, what is needed? So, global collaboration with like minded countries. Okay, for example, when we say like minded countries, here China has got a different take on AI. The Chinese use of AI has been to hack the global systems, to cripple the financial markets in certain cases, and also to gain an edge over the other countries. But when we talk about some of the European nations, UK, US, those are the countries which till now have not shown an increased overture to cripple someone else's systems. So that is where the article argues that you can have various different initiatives such as the Quad AI, right? A kind of an AUKUS Part 2 or G20 AI security. So this kind of collaboration can be done and can be explored by countries like India. Then after that, fill the legacy gaps in cybersecurity and the India stack. This needs upgradation of the system, upgradation, right, of systems, of softwares, and also indicates the importance of hiring more cybersecurity professionals. Okay, more cybersecurity professionals. That is also required. Okay, so for more cybersecurity professionals, you need better mode of education, more concentrated amount of funding which needs to be given to other organizations as well, right? So here basically you need upskilling of the individuals, the working class population, right? So who have basic software information, they need to upgrade, they need to be upgraded, and reskilling of the cybersecurity experts with the changing paradigm as well. For that, you can have seminars and so on, right? Then increased institutional research. So frontline research institutions, for that, more funding is required, more funding needs to be provided, and they need to carry out cutting edge research in terms of AI, and that will also provide the skilled professionals. We will be able to generate our own AI tools as well, which will deepen our understanding in terms of how to deal with AI. Okay, then newer approach to cyber warfare. Now here, one of the cases is where various different types of countries, they will use these kind of AI tools available to them to mount an attack on India. So we need to be aware about it. We need to upgrade our security apparatus. We need to have a fresh threat analysis done, and then we need to patch that up. Okay, so that is where newer approach to cyber warfare needs to be learned first of all, learned and dealt with. Okay? So that is the way forward associate. So here, basically, in this entire article, this is what you have to extract. What is Mythos, developed by Anthropic, has got greater generational power as compared to the previous generations of AI, can self heal, can take care of the zero-day vulnerabilities, can find multiple different vulnerabilities in a system which humans were not even aware about. That means your entire security system, what you had analyzed earlier, now that lies futile because a fresh attack can be mounted. The chained attack system can now be utilized by low level hackers as well. And India is particularly vulnerable because we don't have frontline institutes for research and cyber safety. We have lesser amount of cybersecurity experts. We do not have the back end strength of the India stack that we have. India stack is a success story which has brought about financial inclusion and development, but at the same time, the back end of it is still managed by the legacy systems and the legacy institutes. And as a consequence of that, India is exposed to vulnerabilities. What is the way forward? International collaboration, upskilling, research, and the cyber defense. Okay. Now, the practice question: development of newer models of AI not only present opportunities but also expose countries like India to newer vulnerability. Elaborate. Now, in this elaborate kind of a question, how do you write the answer? Now, here, please understand that your answer has to include two parts of it because the question has two components: opportunities as well as vulnerability. Both of them need to be addressed. Okay. So, in the intro, you talk about artificial intelligence. What is artificial intelligence? Okay. And machine learning. So, it is the ability of any system to learn on its own and to deploy solutions on its own without human intervention. AI and machine learning are the tools in the newer era, which has not only solved much of the human problems, but has also posed newer challenges. That is how you can have an intro. Then, after that, in the body portion, you start by talking about that AI presents a host of opportunities. What are the opportunities presented by AI? That is what you start your body portion with. Right, you can use the bubble method. I would generally suggest point subparagraph method, where you write a point, underline it, and write a subparagraph. So here, the opportunities. So for example, issues such as labor shortage in many of the areas, in many of the countries, they face chronic labor shortage. Okay, health systems, climate change, education, climate change, governance gaps. Okay, governance gaps, multiple different benefits that we have been discussing over the past year and a half associated with the AI. So, those benefits you mentioned. After that, you talk about the vulnerability. Vulnerability. Now, the vulnerabilities that we have discussed, along with that, the loss of jobs, the case of over reliance on machine, etc., and getting left behind in the global race of dominance. These are some things that you can mention in the vulnerabilities, the legacy system, India stack, everything that we have discussed. Now, eventually, later part of your body, you have to provide the case of the way forward, which will lead to your conclusion that going ahead into the 21st century, as India eyes the status of Viksit Bharat by 2047, India needs not only to master but to conquer these challenges presented by AI. That can be done by international collaboration with like minded countries, as well as ensuring a greater cybersecurity deployment, a greater research development and deployment. So, the article argues that the government should urgently release funds of about 15,000 to 20,000 crores for cybersecurity development. So, deployment of funds for cybersecurity development, only these measures can ensure that India is at par with the world when it comes to the artificial intelligence and is able to use it harmoniously for its. So that is how you can conclude the answer. Okay. Now moving on to the next article. India's road through Myanmar is one of engagement. This is relevant for your GS paper. Now understand the article first, then I will show you the map also and the analysis of this also. But what the article is about. So basically, you had the Myanmar's president, that is Yu Ming Ong. Now, Yu Ming Ong visited India and started his visit from Bodh Gaya. Now, this is a kind of a symbol, a diplomatic symbolism, whereby it indicates that, think about it, the president could have landed first in New Delhi, right? Received the ceremonial welcome, but he landed in Bodh Gaya. This was a kind of a diplomatic signaling done by India as well, that India and Myanmar, they don't only share the kind of diplomatic ties, but they have a shared cultural ties as well associated with the spread of Buddhism from this land. So that is where there is a lot more to share with the neighboring country is the diplomatic symbolism of that. Now, just to give you a brief background for those of us who are not aware about it, the relations between India and Myanmar has been topsy-turvy, to be very modest. Topsy-turvy means it goes well, then it takes a dip, then it again goes well, and again takes a dip. Now, the last time, basically, you had the Myanmar military junta, what is known as, or what is spelled as junta, but not pronounced as janta, pronounced as junta. So the military junta basically usurped power and ousted the Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi. Now, Aung San Suu Kyi always had good ties and good diplomatic relations with the global democracies. Now, since she was ousted from power by a military coup, which was done in Myanmar, the global democracies and the global powers, they withdrew their diplomatic relations from Myanmar. They ceased to have any relations with Myanmar. India, for some time, also followed this suit. We did not have any kind of diplomatic over. But we did realize that this kind of a diplomatic void, that no country is ready to engage with Myanmar, China utilized this gap very effectively through infrastructure aids, right? Arms and armament supply, and also building the ties with the military. The Chinese influence in Myanmar has grown substantially since and exponentially since the military coup which happened, which ousted Aung San Suu Kyi. Now, as a consequence of that, we cannot ignore the fact that we share 1,000 kilometer plus land border with Myanmar. And we have the states like Nagaland, Manipur, Arunachal, all these states, they share the border with Myanmar. Now, that makes us vulnerable. Many of the insurgent groups, anti India insurgent groups, they reside in Myanmar, they cross the border, carry out various nefarious activities, and then they go back. So, we need to have a collaboration with Myanmar. Now, India transitioned its policy across ASEAN nations from Look East policy of the early 90s, Act East policy, whereby the effort was paid to increase the momentum of ties with the East Asian nations and the ASEAN nations. Under this, with Myanmar, India did launch a couple of various different initiatives. Which were the initiatives? One was the case of the Kaladan multimodal transport, right? Which basically seeks to provide access to the landlocked regions of the northeastern states to ensure sea and river based connectivity to the northeastern states so that the export and the import can further be smoothened and one is not dependent on Bangladesh anymore. Then the other part is the case of the India Myanmar Thailand IMT International Highway. Now, this trilateral highway seeks to connect East Asian nations, eventually with the possibility of being extended into Laos, Cambodia, and so on, so that our trade can increase and that will lead to the development of the northeastern states of our country. That becomes the hub of development. And as a consequence of that, Indian exports to the ASEAN nations, collaboration with the ASEAN nations, and combating the Chinese influence, that also takes a growing precedence. So, what we are going to discuss here, first of all, the context of it. This is the entire aspect of the article, the context of it, the various different projects that India and Myanmar have in cooperation, the areas of collaboration, and the challenges. Okay. So, first things first, the context of it. Myanmar President Yu Min Hong now visited India, marked an important diplomatic development. His stop at the Mahabodhi temple in Bodh Gaya highlighted the civilizational and the Buddhist links between India and Myanmar. It reflected the growing strategic importance of India Myanmar relations amidst changing geopolitical dynamics. Now, what are the various different projects between India and Myanmar? One is the Kaladan Multimodal Transit Corridor. Now, what is that Kaladan Multimodal Transit Corridor? So, from Kolkata, you have a case of the sea trade to the port at Sitwe in Myanmar. That shipping mode for a distance of 539 kilometers. Then, after that, you have through the river, the Kaladan River, connectivity through the river to the region that is Paletwa. Okay, so that is inland water transport in Myanmar worth around 158 kilometers. Then after that, you have the region Paletwa to Indo-Myanmar border. This one. Okay, now that is around 110 kilometer. And then you have the border and within India, the construction. Okay. So till now, the sea and the river route, they have been finalized. The river route, the construction has happened. It is that construction to the Indian border, which is going through a very treacherous, flood prone region of Kalitwa. Kalitwa is a very flood prone region in the basin of Irrawaddy. So that is where it is basically associated with the hilly tracks also. Construction is difficult. And this is a region which is occupied by multiple rebel groups in Myanmar. So construction is perpetually delayed in this area. But once it happens, then the landlocked region of northeastern part of the country, now that landlocked region will have a newer fillip of growth or newer boost to growth provided by the sea connectivity. So a container from, let's suppose, Vishakhapatnam, or let's suppose from Kolkata, that can reach Sitwe, and from there directly into the far reaches in the eastern part of the country, rather than moving through the Siliguri corridor and following the long circuitous route. So this is something which will save time, save the logistics cost, and that is where Indian exporters will benefit substantially. Okay, so that is the case of the Kaladan multimodal transport. Then you have the India Myanmar Thailand trilateral highway. So what it does, it basically seeks to have the connect to the More Tamu border. So on Indian side in Manipur, you have the More border, right? On Myanmarese side, you have the Tamu border. So from More Tamu border, a highway linking Mandalay, Naypyidaw, and eventually Mysore in Thailand. Okay, Mysore is in Thailand. Okay. Eventually, the aim is to have this extended even up to Laos and Cambodia. So this is something which has been delayed time and time again owing to the difficulty of construction in Myanmar, and the estimated time of completion is cited as 2027. So this will also benefit India ASEAN relations. India ASEAN trade and relations. Okay. It fits as per the Act East policy of India. Policy of India. Right? Now, why is India engaging with Myanmar? Why is it that India is following a kind of a very principled stance that because it is a military coup, we will not engage? That is because India is following pragmatism or realpolitik, or what is also in political sciences known as the Machiavellian method of national interest, pursuing national interest, where you basically just cater to national interest. Idealism does not have much of a place in that. So that is where it is the case where we do share a long border. Okay. And here we cannot ignore the China factor. So here we do share a very long border, very long. Okay. Now, that border is porous as well. That is, people do come in and move out of that border. So that presents a kind of a security threat, and that cannot be left unanswered or unaddressed by a country like India. Then, strategic importance of Myanmar. That strategic importance is very relevant. Linkage with East Asian nation, with East Asia. The economies of East Asia are also progressing at a very fast rate. So we should have linkage, trade ties with them. Now, mind you, the region of the Indian subcontinent is one of the worst connected geographies across the world. When you take a look at the amount of trade, the transit which happens across the Indian subcontinent, it is amongst the minimal across the world. Across the Western front, we don't have access to Central Asia thanks to the presence of Pakistan. Across the Eastern front, the topography makes it very difficult. So that is why IMF, World Bank, and the global economic experts have always cited this, that if India increases its connectivity and its trade relations through the neighboring regions, that will lower the logistics cost, provide India with the economic advantage, and boost well. Now, this will end up making northeastern states as the hub of growth. Okay, northeastern states as hub. Now, mind you, and if you take a look at the geopolitical scenario carefully, when we talk about China's Belt and Road Initiative, you would have wondered that if not, then you should wonder that why is it that the Belt and Road Initiative of China passes through the desert areas of Xinjiang, the low developed areas of Xinjiang, and then connects the region of Europe and other parts of Asia. One of the prime reasons behind this was that if the entire corridor passes through Xinjiang, now it will lead to the development of that region as well as a logistics hub, as a kind of a transit route, and that region will automatically end up gaining prosperity. Manufacturing hubs will develop, employment opportunities will be generated, people will naturally migrate to that area. As a result, the service sector will come in with large numbers, and that will boost the next level and the next generation of growth. So, what China is following as a method for development for the Xinjiang region, imagine the connectivity projects through the East Asian region, northeastern area will have that kind of a projection and a possibility. The security cooperation is a must associated with the insurgent groups in particular. We have a large number of insurgent groups who have been active lately in the past couple of years, right? Even though peace accords have been signed, but still, you have many of the NSC and cadets, the cadre, who still live in the region of Myanmar, and they carry cross border raids. Our military forces, armed personnel, they have suffered substantial amount of damage as well. So we do need to have an intelligence sharing network, a security collaboration between the armies as well. The China factor cannot be ignored. When it comes to Asia, the China factor in any relationship cannot be ignored. India Nepal, India Bangladesh, India Bhutan, India Myanmar as well. Now, as I told you, the diplomatic void which was left behind after the military coup by the junta, now that was immediately filled with the Chinese. The Chinese have provided infrastructure, infrastructure, arms, right? and military to military contact as well. So that is where we cannot immediately counterbalance that. But slowly and steadily, we have to ensure that we are not seen by the Myanmaris as a kind of an adversarial nation. And then the ties will improve. Then the economic cooperation. Right now, the bilateral trade between the two countries is very less, close to around $1.95 billion. So the scope of improvement is huge, particularly for industrial goods, manufactured goods at a cheaper rate that can be provided to Myanmar. Now, the scholarship, for example, for the students, student exchange programs which are being done, you have the Mekong, the Indo Mekong scholarship programs. Now, under that, also, more number of students can be brought to Indian universities. That will also lead to the improvement of the soft diplomacy of our country. So, that is where India's engagement with Myanmar is something which should be cited with optimism going the future. Then moving on to the next articles, couple of articles will take it together. One which has appeared in the editorial section, new and raw, and the other a new phase in India-Nepal relations. Both of them relevant for your DS paper. Now, in recent times, India has basically witnessed a slew of various different visits from the Nepalese political class. The aim is to basically have the ground prepared for the visit by Balen Shah or the newly elected Prime Minister, that is Balendra Shah. Now, Balen Shah has been a result of the Gen Z protest, which has dominated the subcontinent in the region of Bangladesh, in the region of Nepal, in the region of Sri Lanka, and so. Now, Balen Shah represents a newer form of politics. Sense what he also tells in the parliament that he is not withheld by the baggage of the past, that is the historical legacy relation that India and Nepal share. Now mind you, Nepal for the past couple of decades has been seeing India as a kind of a bully in the region, a big brother in the region. And what Nepal tried to play actively in this case, very subtly in this case, is to play or to pitch India and China against each other for their own benefit. Now, Balen Shah's government, as they say, or as he says, is free of all these baggages. Now, India and Nepal, they don't look eye to eye in many areas. One of them is the border dispute. The border dispute, particularly around the Lipu Lake Pass, the Limpiadura, and the Kalapani region. Now, that is something that is as a region claimed by India since 1947. And India has been a status quoist power. India has never sought to get greater land under its own. Nepal, on the other hand, has been looking at this, and basically Balen Shah made a statement in the Nepalese parliament that we hold some areas of Indian land and we are in contact with countries like UK and China for that. That is where when the delegates visited India, now the external affairs minister made it very clear that any kind of dispute between India and Nepal doesn't have a scope of third party involvement like China. After all, the political class who has visited India, after that, they are slated to visit China. So, sensing that, India has put up a brave front. There are certain challenges, though. The foreign secretary of India, now the Balen Shah has basically declined to meet him because he has said it does not fit the protocol. The protocol is foreign secretary level, they should be able to meet the people from the foreign affairs ministry. Prime minister will meet with the prime minister. So it is after a long period of time where the prime minister, or in fact, the first time where the prime minister of Nepal has basically said, I am not going to break protocol for a country like India. We are not going to give you any particular special relation. We are going to treat you just like any other nation, and we are going to deal as equals. Now, what that does do is provide a certain set of challenges, but at the same time opens up new areas of cooperation. That is what we are going to analyze in. First of all, foreign minister Shishir Kanal's visit to India, an earlier visit of the RSP leader Rabi Lamichhane, that signals an active effort by Nepal's new leadership to improve ties with New Delhi. Now, it follows the formation of the government led by Prime Minister Balain Shah, right? India did respond positively, laid out a red carpet. Everybody met with Rabi Lamichhane, and that indicated an overture and an indication from Indian part to improve the ties. Now, one of the major sticking points for the past couple of years has been the region of Limpiadura, Kalapani, and the Lipule. Now, this is a region which is disputed. It is a tri-junction between India, Nepal, and China. Right. Now, as soon as India and China declared the resumption of trade through the Lipula Lake Pass, immediately Nepal lodged a protest. The Chinese said that, look, this is your internal matter. You take care of it. We are not going to interfere. That was a positive signage from the side of China. But Nepal went so aggressive in this that this new map has been depicted and has been printed in their currency notes. Well, right. So these border areas, India and Nepal had always shared an open border. People from India could openly cross into Nepal and vice versa as well. They have long shared historical and cultural ties, right? So there are family ties across the border as well. But then the hardening of the stance which is being done by the political class, this is a kind of a phenomena which is referred to as competitive nationalism. Who is more nationalistic, right? The political class in India cannot withstand any kind of claim that we have occupied Indian territory. No political class in the world can withstand that. Same is the case with the Nepalese government right now as well. So there is this kind of competitive nationalism which hardens the stance taken by the countries, and that puts everything in a doubtful situation. So it is basically the region which connects Uttarakhand with Tibet, and with the pilgrimage season coming, the Mansarovar Yatra coming, this will again flare up. So, first Indian border post for trade with China. So, with China, we have three border posts where we have the trade ties which are maintained. One is the Lipu Lake Pass. This is the region of the Lipu Lake Pass. Then you have the Shipkila in the region of Himachal. And then you have Nathula in Sikkim. So, from these three areas, these are the official transit points between India and China over the land area. Now, it is a part of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. India says trade has existed here since 1904. Now, there are various different areas of cooperation. What are the areas of cooperation? Trade and transit. Both of them can benefit quite substantially. Water sharing. A lot of the Himalayan rivers in India, they come from Nepal. So, water sharing, the construction of the dams, hydroelectric power, energy sharing, infrastructure development. These are the areas where traditionally the governments have always cooperated. And that is where people to people and people centric issues will always benefit the countries in the long run. So, hydropower development, infrastructure connectivity, energy cooperation, and tourism and cultural exchanges. Right? The Buddhist circuit, all of that, the pilgrimage circuit, all of that, the Ramayana circuit, that can significantly boost and increase the ties between both these countries. Okay, so that is the entire gist of these couple of articles, the issues which are prevalent, why India is irked, why Nepal is taking this stance, and what is the way forward. Okay, now China's role in international order. Now, this is a pro China, as pro China article as it can get, relevant for your GS paper too. Now, this is written by the Consul General of China, Qin Jie. So, it talks about the Chinese development and the role of China in the changing geopolitical global order. We are not going to follow everything that this article is about to say, because many of the things is only the Chinese mouthpiece, but some of the essentials out of it. One is that China has emerged as a hub of global diplomacy. That is what the article argues. And arguably so, it is correct as well. Over the past few months, almost all the members of the UN Security Council, the permanent members of UN Security Council, have paid a visit to China, right? From the case of the French to the British to the Russians to even Mr. Trump. All of them are basically trying to court China, trying to have good relations with China, because they know that when it comes to peace in the region, peace in the entirety of the region, nobody can do without China. China is a major factor in this. Other than that, even in terms of trade, now Canadians, for the longest period of time, Canadians and the Britishers, they were very anti China in terms of allowing the trade, because they were aware about the predatory trade practices followed by China, the dumping methodology that they use to dump their goods in different parts of the world, benefiting their own industries, but shutting down the industries across the globe. But even the Canadian Prime Minister, even the British Prime Minister, when they did reach China, they could not stop but talk about trade. Donald Trump, when he traveled to China, he famously traveled with the group of trillionaires, right? So, from the Nvidia CEO to the case of Elon Musk to the tech CEOs, all of them were present. The aim was trade. Then is the case of tech. This is where the world is still suspicious of Chinese motives. But they do know that in many of the areas, the Chinese tech supremacy is so substantial that rather than being competitive, we can only think of being collaborative. So that is where, in the case of tech, many regions of the world, like Russia, etc., they are following collaboration, collaboration rather than cooperation. Okay. Now, China has basically initiated its 15th five-year plan. That is why the article has been written. That the article says that the 15th five-year plan that Chinese are out to implement, it will change the economic outcome of the region. It will bring about newer era of development in China, and if China grows, the world grows. The article does also argue that basically, when you talk about, let's suppose, the global trade, China follows a peaceful methodology. Unlike some of the nations like US, China believes in the UN-led mechanism. So that is why the world should look positively to China. But when we talk about India, with India, China does have certain areas where we can cooperate. What are the areas of cooperation? Education, right? When it particularly comes to the higher education, who have a lot to gain from the Chinese method of education as well. Tourism, huge potential upsides with the Buddhist circuit in India, lot of areas in India that can be popularized, and Chinese tourists are amongst the largest dominant tourists across the globe. They are amongst the good paying tourists as well. So Indian tourism sector can benefit. And mind you, tourism sector is one of those where we have been struggling since the COVID days. Various issues can be there. For example, the rotting urban cities, the safety of the females, etc. But despite that, there is potential and opportunity to grow. It is said that every $1 invested in tourism gives you $6 in return. What are the areas due to which you think that Indian tourism sector is not able to grow? Let me know in the comment section. Cultural exchanges, people to people contacts, business contacts, etc., that can also be done. But there are certain challenges that we cannot ignore. We should be aware about those challenges as well. What are those challenges? We do still have a very active boundary dispute with the Chinese in the region of the Pangong So, in the region of the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh to the region of Arunachal. We don't see eye to eye. There have been various different incursion attempts made by the Chinese to the Manala and the Litila passes in Uttarakhand as well. Strategic competition in the Indo Pacific region, the Chinese Navy, which has expanded at a blinding pace, one of the fastest expansion of the naval force in the past hundreds of years. Now that has started dominating the region of Bay of Bengal and also the region of Pacific Ocean. So as a consequence, India faces a stiff challenge. China's ties with Pakistan, we have seen that in the case of Operation Sindoor as well. And that is something that India again cannot ignore. Concerns over the regional influence, Bangladesh, Nepal, Myanmar, Pakistan, all around us, Sri Lanka, the Chinese influence is very high. The string of pearl strategy that China has followed. Economic challenges, the trade imbalance is humongous. The industrial subsidies that China provides to the steel sector, for example, now that can always cripple India's steel sector. So then, other than that, supply chain dependencies, particularly on, let's suppose, the chips, right, of professionals, everything, battery tech, that can cripple Indian industry and the economic coercion that it does follow in order to extract the best of bargain. So these are the challenges that both of them have to address. Only then there's a lot of scope for improvement. Now, couple of articles relevant for your prelims. Now, this is an image which has just been used in page one. It talks about flock of Indian cormorants. They hunt fish. So Indian cormorants, the birds, they have a very unique ability and a very unique aspect that they indicate. They form large flocks and they hunt in unison. They dive in water. As they do dive in water, what that does, and they dive with a great pace, what that does is basically that concentrates the smaller fish in a smaller area. After that, the final dive happens, and that is when they consume all the fish. So this is a kind of a collaborative hunting technique that is used by the Indian cormorant. In our country, you have three species of cormorants which are out there. Now, which are those cormorants? You have the little cormorant, then you have the Indian cormorant, and then you have the great cormorant. Okay. They are expert divers. Mainly, they eat fish, used web feed to speed underwater, right? Create pellets of the fish bones and then spit them out. That is oftentimes a source of the phosphates. Glands secrete oil, which is used to keep the feathers waterproof, and they often perch with wings spread out. They are colonial nesters. Now, the Indian cormorant is the one which is mentioned or indicated in the image. They fish cooperatively. Okay. Habitat large freshwater wetlands, mangroves, and estuary. You can take a look at that in the entire PDF. IUCN status for all of them is that of least concern. Okay. Least concern. That is the IUCN conservation status. Okay. Now, India calls for dialogue on climate finance adaptation at Bonn meet. So basically, you had the Bonn Climate meet. Bonn Climate meet. Now, what is this? This is basically an annual meeting of nations, meeting of members, member states of United Nations Framework Convention to Climate Change. Okay, that is the Bonn Climate meet. It is held annually in the month of June. Now, the purpose, why do they meet every year? Purpose? The purpose is basically to finalize the outcomes of the previous conference of parties, outcomes, and discuss that of previous conference of party. Conference of party is the highest decision making body for any uh, global convention. So in this particular case, you had the conference of party number 30, COP 30. which was held in Brazil, Belém, in Brazil, right? So the outcomes of that were discussed, and it was discussed how to implement that. Another purpose is to set the agenda for next year, okay, for next year. So in the case of climate conference, COP31 is to be held in Antalya, Turkey. Okay, so to set the agenda for that, that is also done in this climate meeting held now. It is in this meeting where India basically raised certain issues. One is the case of the financing. That global financing, which should be done by the developed nations, is not being done at the same rate, and they are withdrawing from their overall global commitment. That is a major problem. Okay. And the basic principle of common but differentiated responsibility is being violated. So the developed nations should do more. Other than that, India also raised an issue from the carbon border taxes. For example, European Union is set to impose the carbon border adjustment mechanism. So India has raised an issue that this is a protectionist measure garbed under the aspect or under the facade of climate change. It is not the case. So that is what India has raised an issue. This Bonn Climate Meet was uh, hosted, or Australia was actually the president. Australia held the presidency of this climate. Okay. Then few articles from PIB. So GI tag Tezpur Litchi has been quoted from Assam to Dubai. Okay. So Tezpur Litchi, GI tagged of Assam. That is first thing associated with your prelims. Okay. There are multiple varieties of lychees in the region. You cannot possibly remember all of them, but you have the Elaichi, Piaji, Sahi, Bombaya, all of them, right? Now, this GI tag and its export has provided greater amount of income to the farmers. It is something which is done by EPIDA. Okay. Now, what is EPIDA becomes relevant for your prelims also. So, this is the kind of summarization of the role of EPIDA. First of all, it is Agricultural and Processed Food Products Export Development Authority. The purpose to promote, develop, and regulate the export of scheduled agricultural and processed food products from India. Established, it is a statutory body established under the EPIDA Act 1985. Okay, so EPIDA is a statutory body established under the EPIDA Act 1985. It ensures that any of the exports they meet the global quality standards, support exporters with financial schemes and international markets. Also carries out infrastructure development, provides subsidies and assistance to build packhouses, cold storage, refrigerated transport, and also processing technologies, for example, irradiation, which will remove the various contaminants, etc. Organic certification. So EPIDA is the secretariat, serves as the secretariat for the National Program for Organic Production. This becomes important for your prelims. Okay. And also product oversight. That is also done by EPIDA. Okay. Then you basically had Sapling Dialogue 2026. What is that Sapling Dialogue? South Asian Policy Leadership for Improved Nutrition and Growth. That Sapling Dialogue 2026 was held in, it was hosted by Ministry of Food Processing Industries. Okay. Ministry of Food Processing Industries has basically held that. Now, the purpose, food processing as the bridge between agriculture and prosperity, reducing the post harvest losses, improve farm incomes, and strengthen food security across the world. Now, the various different themes, that is, act local, unlocking South Asia's food productive processing opportunities from farm to factories, strengthening the supply chains from shadow to spotlight, formalizing the various different unorganized sector food processors. So these are some of the key themes. So, but for your exam, you should be aware about what that sapling dialogue deals with: security and food processing. Then, Home Minister inaugurated the Land Port Management System Vinimay in New Delhi. Now, basically, the Land Port Management System. Now, what is it? Centralized digital platform to digitize and unify operations across international land borders. It serves as a logistic hub as well. That is the land port, right? It is called as Vinimay. It integrates cargo, passenger, and vehicle processing, because oftentimes at these border checkposts, the delay is and the wait period is spanning across multiple days to a few weeks also in order to get clearance. What it will do, it will provide a centralized, swifter clearance that will improve the trade by almost 30 to 40%, reduce the waiting time for the trucks, and that will improve the efficiency, logistics cost, and so on. Right? So here, single electronic window eliminates up to 90% of paperwork by unifying the various agencies which are associated. It is associated with speed and efficiency, reduces the truck waiting time by 40% to 60%, and gate processing time by almost 35%, end to end workflow, and enhance security. Okay, smart border initiative by securing real time data driven coordination between the various. Okay, so that is basically the case of these articles of PIB, and that brings us to the end of the discussion for today's analysis. I hope you would have liked that and improved your overall understanding of the content. Please ensure that you write the answer of the question that we have discussed, and also put that in the comment section. And if you have liked the session, don't forget to click on the like, share, and the subscribe button. We meet again tomorrow. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you.